If you want to really get a handle on the immigration debates we have today, you have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back to a time of enormous wealth and, well, just massive social change that completely reshaped the country, the Gilded Age. And that name, the Gilded Age, it's actually a huge clue. Mark Twain came up with it, and it perfectly described an era that was all glittery and shiny on the surface, with its skyscrapers and huge industrial fortunes. But underneath, that was a different story. And a massive part of that story was this unprecedented wave of international migration that was transforming the nation's cities. So you can imagine this rapid reshaping of the workforce, of whole neighborhoods, of the culture itself. It wasn't exactly a quiet affair. It created this intense social and political friction, like a national pressure cooker, where all these long-held ideas about what it even meant to be American were being put to the ultimate test. And this pressure, it basically split the country's reaction right down the middle. On one side, you had this really formidable movement rise up, and their message was simple: slam the door shut on new arrivals. But on the other side, you had reformers working to build a bridge, trying to find ways to help newcomers assimilate and thrive. This fundamental conflict, it would define the entire era. Okay, so let's start with that first reaction, the push for exclusion. This was all driven by a powerful ideology called nativism, which argued that in a time of such rapid and frankly unsettling change, the interests of the native-born population had to come first, above all else. And here's the thing, nativism wasn't just some simple fear of foreigners. No, it was this potent mix of three really distinct anxieties that all fed off each other. You had this deep cultural fear of being overwhelmed, you had long-standing religious prejudice, and then you had very real economic anxieties, especially as the nation's boom and bust economy made everyone nervous about jobs. And that cultural fear, man, it was intense. You had prominent figures like Senator Henry Cabot Lodge using this kind of stark, panicked language. I mean, listen to that quote. He and other established Anglo-Saxon Protestants genuinely feared that immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe and from Asia would dilute and destroy what they saw as the purity of American identity. And this fear, it was laser-focused. Chinese immigrants on the West Coast faced just incredible hostility. But the prejudice wasn't just racial. It was deeply religious, too. The huge influx of Irish and Italian immigrants fueled this big wave of anti-Catholic feeling, with groups like the American Protective Association spreading all these wild conspiracy theories about a Catholic plot to take over the U.S. government. Now, to make all these fears sound, well, legitimate, almost scientific, nativists leaned really heavily on something called social Darwinism. They took Darwin's survival of the fittest and just completely twisted it. They argued that if certain immigrant groups were poor or struggling, it wasn't because of their circumstances. Nope. To them, it was proof that they were naturally, racially inferior. And this wasn't just talk. This thinking led directly to federal law. In 1882, Congress passed the truly shocking Chinese Exclusion Act. It banned nearly all immigration from China, and, this is crucial, it denied a path to citizenship for those already here. Then just a few years later, the contract labor law made it illegal for companies to bring in foreign workers. The door was officially, and very deliberately, beginning to slam shut. But, and this is a huge but, that is not the whole story. While Congress was busy trying to slam doors, there was this powerful countercurrent pushing in the exact opposite direction. And that brings us to the other side of the coin, the pull toward inclusion. This was a powerful counter-movement, and it was driven by reformers, by the incredible resilience of immigrants themselves, and, maybe most surprisingly, by the U.S. Supreme Court. And this setup, well, it created this absolutely fascinating contradiction right at the heart of the U.S. government. You've got the legislative branch, Congress, passing laws to specifically exclude people, and at the same time, you've got the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, reinforcing these principles of inclusion. It's wild. And this case, it's the perfect example. United States versus Wonky Mark was a total landmark. The court ruled that under the 14th Amendment, if you are born on U.S. soil, you are a U.S. citizen, period. It doesn't matter what your parents' nationality or immigration status is. So think about that. Even as the Exclusion Act was targeting the Chinese, the highest court in the land cemented a principle that guaranteed citizenship for their American-born children. And you gotta remember, the immigrants themselves, they weren't just passively taking all this.
They fought back. They fought for their place. You have people like Rose Cohen, a Jewish immigrant, who became this fierce labor activist, trying to balance her traditions while fighting for American ideals. Or the Tate family, who courageously sued the San Francisco school district to end segregation. They were demanding a future for their kids.
And they weren't alone. They found allies. This new, really organized reform effort popped up, and it offered a completely different vision from the nativists. Not one of rejection, but one of adaptation and support. This was the settlement house movement. It was led mostly by these amazing women reformers like Jane Addams. Her Hull House in Chicago became the iconic example. These centers were set up right in the middle of immigrant neighborhoods. And it wasn't about charity, see, it was about empowerment. They offered practical tools, English classes, childcare, job training, all while making a point to respect the cultures of the people they served and build up a sense of community. So, when you put it all together, what are we supposed to make of these two powerful, clashing forces? What exactly is the legacy of this intense conflict?
Okay, here's the most important thing to get. The era didn't really end with a clear winner. One ideology didn't just defeat the other. Instead, the Gilded Age left America with both traditions, exclusion and inclusion, fully intact and deeply woven into the nation's laws and its culture.
So what it really did was it didn't resolve the question of who belongs in America. It baked the conflict right into the country's DNA. This fundamental push and pull, this constant tension between welcoming newcomers and slamming the door shut, became a defining and enduring feature of the American experience.
And that leaves us with a huge question, one that connects this history directly to our own time. As we continue to debate these very same issues, from the border to the courts, I'll leave you with this. When you look around today, which of these Gilded Age forces, the push for exclusion or the pull toward inclusion, which one do you think is defining America right now?